Algebra 1, Lesson 5-5, Standard Form. Learning targets. I will be able to graph linear equations using intercepts and write linear equations in standard form. Warm up. An athlete wants to make a snack mix of peanuts and cashews that will contain a certain amount of protein. Cashews have 4 grams of protein per ounce, and peanuts have 7 grams of protein per ounce. How many grams of protein will the athlete's mix contain? What do the points 7, 0, and 0, 4 represent? We'll explain that as the x and y intercepts. So the x-intercept is where the graph of a line crosses the x-axis, and that's exactly where y equals 0. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, and that's where x equals 0. Key concept: standard form of a linear equation. Standard form comes in the form ax plus by equals c. So as an example of standard form, notice first of all that both the x and the y are on the same side of the equation. So an example might be 2x plus 3y equals 6. And notice that here a is 2, b is 3, and c is 6. Now, the method we use for graphing is called the tic-tac-toe method. And the reason we use it for graphing is that it immediately gives us the x and y intercepts, as you'll see. So in our table, we have 2 lines. In one line, we have 0 underneath x, and in the second line, not on the same line, in the second line, we have 0 underneath y. So when 0 is right underneath x, that means x equals 0. When 0 is underneath y, that means y equals 0. And the way we use that is we'll substitute the 0 in for x on the top line. So instead of 2x, we have 2 times 0 plus 3y equals 6. But anything times 0 is 0, and anything plus 0 is just what it is. So we end up with 3y equals 6. Divide both sides by 3, and we end up with y equals 2. So we place that in the table, and I have the ordered pair 0, 2. Do the same thing this time with y equals 0 on the next line, and we see that 2x plus 3y, which is now 0, equals 6. And again, anything plus 0 is what it is, so I have 2x equals 6, divide both sides by 2, and I end up with x equals 3. So we get these intercepts. The y-intercept then is at 0, 2, x-intercept is at 3, 0. Why is that important? Well, all I need is 2 points to graph a line, and here they are. So let's see how we use that very quickly. So as always, when I graph, I put an arrow on the positive y-axis and x-axis and label them y and x, and an O at the origin. Now I know 0, 2 is on the y-axis. It is in fact where the graph will cross the y-axis. And 3, 0 similarly is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So I have 2 points. If I just connect those 2 points with a straight line, or a straight enough line, I end up with the graph of that equation using the intercepts, which is what standard form gives us. So here's another example You can never really have enough. Finding the x and y intercepts. What are the x and y intercepts of the graph? 4x plus 5y equals 20. Very quickly, once again, what we want to do is make the tic-tac-toe table 0 under the x on one line, 0 under the y on the other. So for the top line, I have x equals 0, which gives me 4x, which is 0, plus 5y equals 20. And again, we end up with just 5y because the 0 goes away, equal to 20. Divide both sides by 5, and I have y equals 4, so I have the ordered pair 0, 4. We do the same thing with y now. Set it equal to 0, and I have 4x plus 5 times 0 equals 20. And so I have 4x equals 20. Divide both sides by 4, and I have, let me write that a little more neatly, and I have x equals 5. So I have the ordered pair 5, 0. So I have my two intercepts, namely 0, 4, and 5, 0. So we will graph those 2 points and then draw a line through them. So 5, 0 and 0, 4. I'll mark those positions with points, and then I'll draw a line through them. And there is my line. Done very quickly, neatly, and succinctly using the tic-tac-toe method when we have an equation in standard form. Example 2, graph a line using intercepts. What is the graph of x minus 4y equals negative 4? Well, funny you should ask, because it just happens that I know how to graph this using the tic-tac-toe method. 0 under the x, 0 under the y. When x is 0, I get x minus 4y equals negative 4. So that actually gives me y equals positive 1. So I get the ordered pair 0, 1. When y equals 0, I get x minus 4 times 0 equals negative 4. But that actually just becomes x equals negative 4. So I have the ordered pair 0, negative 4. Excuse me, negative 4, 0. So 0, 1, and negative 4, 0. I will graph the ordered pairs. So here I have the graph ready for 0, 1 and negative 4, 0. Once again, I will connect the dots. And voila, we have the graph of the equation in standard form. Example 3 is very important because I think students have had a hard time with these two. Graphing a horizontal line. A horizontal line occurs when y equals a constant or a number. When y just equals a number, we get a horizontal line through that number. Vertical line occurs when x just equals a number. And so the vertical line will pass through that number. So graph x equals 4 first. or excuse me, y equals 4. So here I have the graph all loaded and ready to go. And I'm going to put, so I have y equals 4. Y always equals 4 no matter what x equals. So x ranges through all possible values, passes through the y-axis at 4, and goes forever in both directions. In fact, a horizontal line. Similarly, we can graph the vertical line for x equals -3. So here's the graph all preloaded and ready to go. And we'll make a vertical line no matter what y equals, x always equals -3. So we range through all possible y values and pass through the x-axis at -3. And there is the graph, which is vertical for x equals -3. X always equals -3 on that graph. Example 4, transforming to standard form. Remember, standard form has both variables on the same side of the equation. So for number 1, we're in what? You've got it, slope-intercept form. So we have y equals -2x plus 6. So I would like to get both the x and the y on the left-hand side. So I will add 2x to both sides of the equation. When I do that, what happens is I have 2x plus y equals 6. That equation is in standard form. Let's try the second equation. The second equation is in, you guessed it, point-slope form. So we're going to take this equation in point-slope form and put both variables on one side of the equation. The first thing I'll do is I'll distribute the -2 to both sides of the equation. So we get -2x minus 6. I am going to add, once again, 2x to both sides of the equation. And I end up with 2x minus y minus 2 equals -6. But I want the constant on the other side of the equal sign. So I will add 2 to both sides to bring the constant term only to the right-hand side of the equal sign. So I end up with 2x minus y equals -4. That is in standard form. ax plus by equals c. Indeed. Example 5, our final example using standard form, online shopping. A media download store sells songs for $1 each and movies for $12 each. You have $60 to spend. Write and graph an equation that describes the items you can purchase. What are 3 combinations of numbers of songs and movies you can purchase? So the first thing is I have 2 rates rather than 1. And when I have 2 rates, I actually have to use both variables on one side of the equal sign. So I have $1 each. So I have 1 times one of the variables, which will be x, if we let equal number of songs, and if we let y equal number of movies both purchased. So 1 times x, we know each movie is 12 times y, and we have $60 altogether to spend. So that gives us our standard form of the equation. So that was the first part. The second part is we would like to graph, so I'm going to make a tic-tac-toe table. because that's how we work it. 0 on one line, 0 on the other, but never 0 in both places in most cases. So when x is 0, I can really just get rid of x, and what I really have is 12y equals 60. If I divide 12 on both sides of the equation, I get y equals 5, because 5 times 12 is 60, and 60 divided by 12 is 5. So there we are with the ordered pair 0, 5. If, on the other hand, I let y equals 0, 0 times 12 is 0, and I'm just left with x equals 60. So when I go to graph, and I will, because on the x-axis I'm dealing with such a large number, it might be useful to go by tens on the x-axis and fives on the y-axis. Now, the other thing to realize is this is number of movies. Number of songs purchased. It is always good to label an axis with the actual name of what it is, if that's the case. And so the y-axis will be the number of movies purchased, which goes up to 5 possible. So again, 0, 5, put a dot there. 0, 60, we'll put a dot there. And then we will connect the dots using a straight line. And actually, when we think about it, we can't have negative amounts of purchases, so we're really stuck in between those two values in a real world sort of setting. So there we are. There's the graph of the situation and all the possibilities that we have. I hope you enjoyed this video. Always let me know when you have suggestions for me to improve it. I know some of you would like different celebrities. Maybe email me, 'cause I'm a visual learner. When you tell me, sometimes I forget. Have a great evening.